Have you ever been talking to someone and you just cannot get your head around why they believe a certain thing?
Oh, absolutely. It feels like you're on completely different planets sometimes, doesn't it?
Exactly. Like
Um,
their whole way of thinking is just alien.
Yeah, you hit these walls where understanding seems impossible.
Well, today we're doing a deep dive into something that might shed some light on that. It's a really interesting connection, actually.
Hmm.
We're going to look at how a model originally built for really high pressure situations like flying an airplane.
Okay. Aviation safety.
Yeah, how that model can actually help us understand beliefs in just, everyday chats.
It does sound surprising.
Yeah.
So what models are we talking about?
We'll be digging into Gary Endsley's model of situation awareness. It has 3 levels.
Right, Endsley's SA model. Very influential in human factors.
And then we're going to see how it sort of overlays onto street epistemology.
Ah, street epistemology. People
Yeah.
like Anthony Magnabosco, that approach.
Exactly. So the mission here for everyone listening is pretty simple, really.
We should.
To walk away with a new way, maybe a more structured way, to think about why people believe what they do, and maybe, just maybe, have better conversations about it all.
Sounds like a valuable goal. Okay, where do we start? Endsley's model.
Let's do it. Situation awareness. What's the core idea there?
Well, Endsley's model is basically about how people, especially in complex, fast-moving environments, build up and keep a good mental picture of what's going on.
Like that pilot example.
Exactly like the pilot. And it breaks down into 3 key levels. Level 1 is perception.
Perception. Okay, so that's just noticing stuff, like the basic input.
Pretty much, for the pilot, it's reading the altimeter, hearing a warning buzzer, seeing another plane out the window. It's the raw sensory data collection.
Okay, makes sense for a cockpit. How does that idea translate to, say, a discussion about beliefs?
Think of it as really active listening, but it's more than just the words.
More than the words.
Yeah, it's the tone of voice. Are they confident, hesitant? Is there like an emotional charge there?
Right. And body language, too.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Crossed arms, leaning forward, fidgeting, maybe a slight frown they don't even realize they have.
Yeah.
It's about perceiving all the signals, verbal and nonverbal, in that moment.
So you're basically scanning the whole communication landscape, not just the dictionary definitions of the words.
You got it. That's the foundation. You have to perceive the information first.
Okay, perception. Got it. What's level 2 then?
Level 2 is comprehension. This is where you take all those bits of perceived data and start putting them together.
Making sense of it all.
Exactly. The pilot integrates the altitude reading, the engine noise, the fuel gauge to understand, okay, what's my current situation? Are we flying level? Is there an issue developing?
Right. So in our belief conversation,
Huh.
comprehension would be taking those words, the tone, the body language.
And trying to build a picture of their actual belief system. You're synthesizing the cues.
Synthesizing, like trying to understand the why.
Precisely the why. How do their statements connect? What sort of reasons or maybe lack of reasons do they give? Are there strong emotions tied to certain ideas? You're starting to map out their epistemic framework.
Their epistemic framework, what's that exactly?
It's basically their underlying rules. The rules they use to decide what counts as a good reason to believe something. How do they determine what's true or reliable?
Okay, so you're trying to understand their internal logic, or maybe where the logic seems a bit fuzzy.
Yeah, you're looking for the connections, the structure holding it all together, or sometimes the lack of structure.
Makes sense. Perception, then comprehension. And level 3 was projection.
Projection, yes.
That sounds like fortune telling. Are we predicting the future now?
Ha! Not quite crystal ball stuff. In aviation, projection is about anticipating what's likely to happen next based on your current understanding.
Yeah.
So if I understand the situation now, comprehension, what does that imply about the near future? Do I need to change course? Is that weather system going to be a problem in 5 minutes?
Gotcha. So how does that work in a conversation? Am I predicting their next sentence?
In a way, yeah, but it's more strategic. It's about estimating how the conversation might evolve based on how they've reacted so far.
Based on their responses?
How are they likely to react if I ask this particular question? If you notice they got a bit defensive when you asked about, say, their source of information,
Right.
you can project that pushing harder on that specific point right now might just shut down the conversation.
Okay, so projection is about using what you've perceived and comprehended to think ahead conversationally. To plan your next move, almost.
Exactly. To formulate questions strategically, questions designed to maybe uncover more insights or perhaps gently highlight an inconsistency without immediately putting them on the defensive.
Thinking ahead. I like that.
And that focus on strategic, gentle questioning.
Well, it leads us very nicely into street epistemology, doesn't it?
It really does. So street epistemology, for anyone maybe not familiar, what's the core idea there? It's not about arguing on street corners, right? No, generally not. It's more a method, a conversational technique. It focuses less on debating the conclusion of a belief.
Like whether the belief itself is true or false.
Right. And more on exploring how the person arrived at that belief. What's their reasoning process, their method.
So it's about the journey, not just the destination of the belief.
That's a great way to put it. People like Magna Bosco use reflective questions. It's often compared to the Socratic method.
Asking questions to help someone examine their own thoughts.
Exactly. The main goal isn't really to win or even to change their mind right there and then. It's more about encouraging reflection.
Reflecting on the foundations of their beliefs, like why do they think that's a good reason?
Precisely. You're prompting them to maybe question their assumptions, the things they take for granted, to explore the justifications they offer. And a big part of it is fostering metacognition.
Metacognition. Thinking about thinking.
Thinking about how they think, yeah. How reliable is the method they use to reach that conclusion?
And it's crucial that it's non-confrontational, isn't it? That seems key.
Oh, absolutely essential. Empathy is huge. The focus is on clarity, on genuine curiosity, on critical reflection together. You want to create a space where they feel comfortable exploring their own reasoning, not attacked.
Right, not an interrogation, more of a collaborative exploration.
That's the ideal, yes.
Okay.
Our cows are watching. Make them proud by subscribing.
Click subscribe. It's cheaper than hay and twice as fun.
Okay.
Which is like, interesting comparison.
True hay is expensive.
Yeah, it is.
But is that really?
It's not really a selling point. So we've got Endsley's model: perception, comprehension, projection for understanding a situation.
Yep.
And we've got street epistemology for exploring the reasons behind beliefs through questioning.
Correct.
Now, the really cool part, how do these actually connect? How does that aviation model map onto what a street epistemologist is doing?
The overlap is surprisingly strong, I think. Let's go back to level 1, perception.
Okay, the pilot seeing the dials, hearing the warnings.
Right. Now think about the street epistemologist. They are intensely perceiving signals too, aren't they?
You mean like how the person answers?
Exactly. The specific words they choose, any little pauses, any hesitation, the emotion that comes through in their voice when they talk about certain aspects of their belief, their body language. Are they relaxed, tense?
So it's like the SE practitioner is scanning the conversational cockpit for all these indicators.
Perfectly put. That initial phase is all about that scan. Looking for those key moments when a belief is stated clearly, or maybe when a slight contradiction pops up, it's data gathering.
Okay, yeah, I see that. Paying really close attention to the how, not just the what.
That's a key takeaway, definitely. Don't just listen to the words. Notice how they're delivered. Those little shifts can tell you a lot.
All right, so that's perception mapping onto the initial observation in SE. What about level 2, comprehension, building the mental map?
Okay, so the pilot integrates weather data, system readings, ATC calls to get the big picture.
Right.
The street epistemologist integrates all those perceived cues, the words, tone, emotions, justifications, offered to build a cognitive map of the other person's belief structure.
A map of their reasoning.
Yes. Trying to understand their epistemic framework we talked about, you start seeing patterns.
Patterns? Like what?
Well, maybe they consistently rely on anecdotes as proof. Or perhaps their reasoning seems circular. Or they dismiss certain kinds of evidence out of hand.
Yeah.
You're mapping out how their system for deciding what's true seems to work.
So you're not just understanding the belief, you're understanding the system that produced and maintains the belief.
Exactly. You're looking at the interplay of the parts, assumptions, evidence evaluation, trusted sources, emotional anchors. It's like understanding how the plane systems interact.
Okay, that's a powerful idea. Looking for those recurring patterns and how they justify things. That really reveals their underlying approach, doesn't it?
It really does. And spotting contradictions fits here too, right? That would be like seeing conflicting data points on your map during comprehension.
Yeah, exactly, even if they don't see the contradiction yet. Okay, so perception links to observing cues, comprehension links to mapping their reasoning system. What about level 3, projection, anticipating the next step?
So the pilot uses their comprehension to anticipate, okay, if I maintain this course, I might hit turbulence.
Right.
The street epistemologist uses their comprehension of the person's belief system and reactions so far to anticipate.
How they might react to certain questions.
Precisely. If exploring their reliance on anecdotes seemed to make them uncomfortable, level 1 perception feeding level 2 comprehension, then you can project, level 3, that directly saying anecdotes aren't reliable evidence might provoke defensiveness.
Ah, okay. So you adjust your approach based on that projection, like the pilot adjusting course.
Exactly. Strategic questioning becomes about planning your conversational moves. Thinking a few steps ahead, how can I ask this in a way that encourages reflection rather than defensiveness? How can I guide them gently to maybe see that inconsistency themselves?
It's like conversational navigation, really, using the map you build to chart the best path forward.
That's a perfect analogy. Pay attention to their reactions. Defensiveness is a clear signal to maybe change tack, try a different angle.
Right. Wow. Okay, seeing it laid out like that. Perception, comprehension, projection applied to conversations about beliefs.
Unlock the tools to rethink, reflect, and grow. Sign up for our free course at navigatingbeliefs.com.
I like the word unlock. It's like there's this potential within you, but you need the right key.
Right, it's like a treasure chest or something.
Exactly. That really adds a layer of structure, doesn't it?
It does. It takes something that can feel messy and a bit chaotic and gives you a framework to think about it more clearly.
So let's talk about the payoff. For someone listening, why is thinking this way actually useful? What are the benefits?
Well, I think the biggest one is just enhanced clarity in the conversation itself.
How so?
By consciously moving through these levels, you're less likely to just drift aimlessly or get stuck in an unproductive back and forth. You're actively looking for cues, level 1, trying to understand the underlying structure, level 2, and thinking strategically about where to go next, level 3.
So you're less likely to miss important stuff.
Exactly. And you can adapt your strategy on the fly based on what you're perceiving and comprehending. It makes the conversation potentially much more productive.
And it's not just about understanding the other person better, right? Does it help us too?
Oh, hugely. It boosts self-awareness. By thinking in these terms, you start noticing your own conversational habits. Am I missing cues? Did I misunderstand why they said that? Am I projecting my own assumptions onto them?
That's a good point, turning the lens back on ourselves.
And that projection piece, thinking about how your questions might land, that helps you preempt defensiveness. You become more mindful, more intentional in how you communicate.
So it's like developing better conversational radar and navigation skills for ourselves.
Well put. It helps you become a more reflective and hopefully more effective communicator in these tricky areas.
Okay, that all sounds great. But it can't be exactly like flying a plane, can it? I mean, people are more complicated than dashboards.
That's a really crucial point to make. Absolutely. There are big differences.
Like what?
Well, first off, human conversations are messy. They're packed with emotion, ambiguity. The data you're getting isn't like a clean digital readout.
Yeah, interpreting a frown isn't quite like reading an altimeter.
Exactly. There's subjectivity involved. You have to constantly kind of check your interpretations. Am I reading this situation correctly? Am I understanding their belief accurately, or am I filtering it through my own biases? You need humility.
And what about just keeping it natural? If I'm consciously thinking perception, comprehension, projection, am I going to sound like a robot?
Yeah, that's the other balancing act. You definitely don't want it to feel like you're running down a checklist.
Right. It has to feel like a real conversation.
It absolutely does.
Right.
This model, this overlay, it's a guide. It's a way to structure your thinking, a mental framework, not a rigid script you follow word for word.
So it informs your approach, but you still need to be flexible, responsive, human.
Totally. You need to adapt to the flow, respond genuinely, allow for tangents, acknowledge emotions. It's about informed intuition, maybe, rather than robotic protocol. Calibration is key.
Okay. So wrapping things up then, the big idea here is that this situation awareness model from aviation.
Perception, comprehension, projection.
gives us a really insightful lens for looking at conversations about beliefs, especially when combined with the spirit of street epistemology.
It offers a structured way to think about understanding the other person's perspective, their reasoning, and how to navigate the conversation more productively.
And hopefully more empathetically, too.
Ideally, yes.
Yes.
Enhancing understanding on both sides.
So here's something for everyone listening to maybe chew on. Next time you're in one of those conversations, discussing a belief someone holds deeply, try consciously thinking about it through these levels. What are you perceiving beyond just the words? How are you comprehending their underlying reasoning? And how might you project the best way to ask your next question?
Yeah, just notice what shifts. What subtle cues pop out that maybe you wouldn't have registered before? How does trying to map their why change how you listen?
It might just change the whole dynamic.
It could. Even if you still disagree fundamentally, you might understand why they believe it a lot better.
And if you want to dig deeper, definitely check out Gary Endsley's work on situation awareness.
And look up resources on Street Epistemology, Anthony Magnabosco's site, and others have lots of examples and information.
We really think this framework is a valuable tool. In a world full of diverse, often clashing viewpoints, anything that helps foster a bit more understanding, well, that seems worthwhile.
Couldn't agree more. It's about building bridges, not just winning arguments.
Thanks for taking this deep dive with us today. Hope it gave you some interesting things to think about.